Have you ever come across that one person in school that never studied for anything? Like, they always somehow knew what they were doing? And like, whenever you had an incredibly important project you were sweating bullets over, they were playing cool math games, and you just wanted to shake them at mock speed, demanding, how the hell do you do that? Oh, I wasn't that kid. I was actually the other one. Spoilers, this is not a flex. In the slightest, honestly. When I was younger, I felt like I knew how to do things super easily. I'd be given something to do, the light bulb will turn on, and somehow I'd do it, rinse and repeat. Up until fairly recently, I've gone through my fair share of pinches by relying on this light bulb, and for my senior thesis project, I decided to do the same thing. Choose something to do, the light bulb will turn on, I do it, somehow, and then rinse and repeat. As you can already tell by this video's title and possibly beyond exasperated thumbnail, that ain't go entirely too well. And I'm here to walk you through the 4 weeks of what was and what could have and should have been. If you're a game developer yourself, I highly encourage you to share your personal experiences getting started with game dev, and also feel free to point out any mistakes I make during this video. Just be kind to me, please. So take notes, and once this video ends, immediately light them on fire. Here's how not to make a game in 1 month. Here's a brief game plan. The player would approach the boss and then be thrown into combat. It was originally going to be a hack and slash, but I eventually settled for a turn-based combat system due to time constraints. The central mechanic of the fight would be health, or in this universe dreamscape, corruption. For context, different characters rely on having specific balances of corruption and lucidity, depending on the character's typing. A bar being fully overwhelmed with either would cause the character to wake up, or, in other words, die. For example, the player will be playing as Soul, whose typing is lucid. She relies heavily on having her health bar mainly consist of lucidity. The boss, Eve, has a rift typing, meaning that she relies on her health bar consisting of corruption. You get the idea. The player has to take constant risk by dishing out pieces of their own lucidity or corruption and inflicting a percentage of it to their opponents. It becomes a lot more complex when more enemies and team members are present, especially of different typings. Pretty neat. It'd be a lot neater if I didn't wait several months, but who gaff. This first week was dedicated to picking up the pieces of my procrastination. We are barely 5 minutes in, and we've already reached our first mistake that gots to be a record. For context, I was given a couple months to complete this project, and I regrettably spent a lot of it popping different ideas like they were tic-tacs. It's not that I never had a solid idea, but it's at the time I just didn't want to start. I mean, I couldn't. The light bulb wasn't on yet, of course. So I waited several months until I had one left. After I sorted myself out and forced myself to land on this project idea, I finally got to planning how I wanted my game to look and function. For the actual story of the game, I based it off of 2 original characters, Soul and Eve. Happy Pride Month, by the way. Totally unrelated, of course. Here's where we come to another mistake, failing to properly document my characters. Your brain will not remember it all. You will not recall every bit of information about your characters, and you will look silly scribbling really important details about them on your AP Comp Sci papers. In fact, you will look sillier when you ask for those papers back and your teacher stares at you in total bewilderment. True story, by the way. Not my true story, of course. A friend's true story, but who's keeping tabs. With the struggle of trying to organize my character information, I decided to keep an actual database for my characters, which segues perfectly into this video sponsor, UNVALE. UNVALE is an anti-AI and never NFT platform that hosts over 150,000 creatives, supporting them in cultivating their own original characters, stories, and worlds. There's a multitude of different features that UNVALE has in order to nurture and encourage creativity within its community, such as character pages, where you can upload photos of your OCs, explain their lore, and establish specific traits core to who they are. There is Markdown and discovery support, so you can get your ideas to a wider audience. You can also make worlds and funnel all your characters in writing into a singular hub. There's also an option for people to collaborate on worlds if that's your thing. You can follow users, like content that you like, and comment practically everywhere. Nearly every work gets seen and receives some sort of support from the community. There's also the really cool feature, Question of the Days, that correlates to your characters, so you might find yourself coming up with new things about them as you answer these questions. And lastly, the Explore page allows the users to describe their recent or trending posts on UNVALE, regardless of if they're characters, worlds, writings, etc, etc. I've only recently gone into UNVALE, and I'm still in the process of uploading my characters onto the platform, but I've had nothing but good experiences navigating the site, and I'm sure you will too. So, if you really need a place to sort out your great ideas, I really suggest using UNVALE. You can visit UNVALE by clicking on the link at the top of the description below. Once again, huge shout out and thank you to UNVALE for reaching out. With as much as I could gather about these two guys, I got to writing whatever I could about them. I actually managed to make a pretty decent dialogue leading up to the main fight. Unfortunately, I had to put these cutscenes on the back burner so that I can establish the core game loop. Do we get back to that, you're asking? Don't ask questions you don't want answers to. But now that I had a solid foundation for a plan, I started working. The light bulb still wasn't on, but I decided to work despite that. Cause it's gonna turn on any second from now. It always does. Here's the week where I uploaded a lot of my sprites into GameMaker. As you already know, I don't dabble in pixel art. In fact, I can say with full confidence that I'm pretty bad at it. When making my first sprite, I actually set my canvas to 256 pixels. That's how bad it was. Since I was using GameMaker, I also needed to create tile sets, which are basically reusable images that are tiled, and those tiles can be used anywhere in a game. They could be used for floors, walls, etc, etc. For my first run, I used those same tiles and I added them to a collision layer on GameMaker so that when coding, I can grab the ID of the collision layer and then use a move and collide function, which will register those tiles as a no-go, or walls. I made a majority of my sprites and assets during this week. Keyword, majority. I got distracted and thought, hey, I'm just gonna do it later. So while we're already here, take a seat. Let's go through the mistakes I made this week. First off, and this is like half a mistake, but I'm definitely still counting it. When you're in a pinch and you think you can magically pick up a new medium and get it right the first time, you gotta be out of your mind or stupid. Or both. I was both. I could have experimented another time. I could have shifted gears as soon as this project was done. I could have kept it simple, but no. I just had to make multiple iterations of these sprites at 256 pixels. Oh my god. Is that not silly? 0 out of 10, terrible planning, get ready for the guillotine. Secondly, I'm gonna do it later? Come back here, sit your behind down, and do your work. You're not gonna do it later, because you know what you actually did later? You know what you actually did later? You played Stardew Valley. Pack it up. Don't wait until the last minute to do things. It's gonna eat you alive. But, I said, it's salvageable. Maybe we have to give the light bulb a little nudge and it'll turn on. And when it does, before I know it, this project will be done and I would have made it through one last time. All I had to do was chill. I could be chill. I've been gnawing on the glass of this light bulb, hoping that the damage I inflict upon it will somehow surge the electric currents to power it, granting it security and safety before my fist puts it out of its misery. No, I'm not chill. Let's go over the positives. I finally trudged along and got my sprites done. All of them. Not majority, all of them. Thank you. Thank you. Hold your applause. I used whatever knowledge I could grab from my AP Computer Science class to help me code, and I frequently reached out to my teacher for help. Wherever you are, thank you, girl. Learning GML wasn't a steep curve at all, especially just coming from Python, and I thoroughly enjoyed writing the code for these guys. Any issues I ran into, I usually referred to the program's documentation, and I usually looked for a tutorial online. I got soul moving, I created a dash and tied it to a fixed amount of stamina, and this is where I fully decided to switch to turn-based combat because I shed too many tears over alarms and switch states. Sorry guys! That was all the positives. Sorry, that was a singular positive. Let's go on to the plural negatives. 1. Instead of properly learning how to code attacks, I just dropped them entirely to avoid extra work. Maybe past me was smart. Or maybe they were just a coward. 2. I didn't mention this before, but this was when I was working on my pick up the pencil video and I totally got sidetracked by that. Poor management in general, get hit by the guillotine again. 3. I kept adding ideas when I didn't even have my base game loop done. The last one I had only talked about briefly in another video, but having the nerve to add ideas to a makeshift project that only has rusty nails and Elmer's glue keeping it together? That's a lot of audacity, bro. I kept biting off more than I could chew, and I let my scope go beyond what was feasible for me to accomplish in the 2 weeks I had left. It was careless, delusional, and a horrid Hail Mary. Actually, every time my teacher walked by and saw my ideas in my notebook instead of me doing my actual work, he'd shake his head in disappointment, and I don't think I felt that much pain in my entire life. And I've played Sonic 06. Sorry for the random stray, I love Sonic, but you gotta understand, like I just had to make a reference this video. That light bulb was off, and at this point, I've come to terms with it not turning on. So, with the time I had left, I decided to do the most I could before I presented my project. I worked in the dark, and I was okay with that. I made my bed, and I'm gonna lie in it. It's all I could have done, and I tried to make it count. And with a month finally gone, I presented my game to the class. Let's review it. Wait, what is that? What is that? Oh, wait, my bad, right, I forgot to mention the actual last week. I'll be frank with you, I practically lost my mind and ended up with this. Yeah, it didn't go too well, as you can clearly see. After I got that last video out, I got back to my calendar and saw that I only had a week left and thought, hey, that's okay. I didn't have that little time. Like, this is doable. That is until I began making so many errors within GML. Thankfully, it showed me which line I screwed up on, unlike other coding languages that would just throw me into the wolves and make me figure it out. But when that failed to work, I contemplated sending my teacher an email, either asking for an extension or profusely apologizing for being sick for the rest of the year. I did neither and decided to cry. Here's a picture. Use your imagination. After all that, I decided that, hey, once again, this is my bed and I will lay in it. I did what I could, even though that stupid light never turned on. I can't rely on it in the future. That'd be stupid. I don't want to be that light, which is stupid. At the end of the week, after flipping through many ideas on how to salvage this poor excuse of a game, I ended up presenting the best I had. Concepts and ideas! I realized after writing this sequence that this entire past few paragraphs have been just the 5 stages of grief incarnate. That's how bad it was. Thankfully, through sharing the things I learned within that month, I was able to salvage my grade. I learned a new coding language and more about coding logic in general. I learned about the fundamentals of pixel art, and I made some pretty outright sprites at the end of the day. I learned about GameMaker's core functions, and I also got a lot better at concept art, no matter how much that pisses me off. Although I didn't make my game in 1 month, I learned something. I gained what I should have been after from the start, experience, and I was content with that. Now, this video wasn't made for me to joke about nearly flunking my senior thesis. Trust me, I'm still partially embarrassed about having to finish writing this video because I didn't meet my end goal. I didn't complete what I set out to do. But I made it, I passed the class, and I graduated, and I'm out. Thank you very much, that's what matters. In the end, the light bulb never turned on, and that's ultimately what held me back. I should have never expected to immediately understand game dev and make a flawless game in a month, let alone several. This stuff takes years to perfect, and because I held such unrealistic standards for myself, I never allowed myself to slowly gain that experience. I thought it just hit me. I thought the light would just turn on. When it comes to creating, I love showing people the end products of my work, only briefly discussing what led me there. Truthfully, there's some projects that have never left my folders. There's some works in progresses that have never touched a single corner of the internet, fleshed out or not. This video is some of that. My failures, my shortcomings. Sometimes things just don't work out. Sometimes you get disinterested. Sometimes you get frustrated, really bored. You procrastinate for months on your senior thesis project. The list could go on. But does this mean I'm done with game dev? Absolutely not. If anything, I'm more intrigued than ever to keep on learning. I want to give myself proper time to gain experience and eventually share my stories through the art of game dev. I may have failed before, but as long as I'm willing, I can always try again. So, here's the moment you've been waiting for! Light those notes on fire and forget about 70% of what I said. Now, take a new sheet of paper and write down the following affirmations. I will do it now, not tomorrow. I will not bite off more than I can chew. I will not wait for the light bulb to turn on. And most importantly, I am not him. Stay safe out there.